what they said was, they said that they, in order to strike down something that's constitutional that a state does, you've got to find something. If I had my Constitution, I'd hold it up here. You got to find something in the Constitution that makes it constitutional or unconstitutional that state did. Well, there's nothing the states did, and so they found a fundamental right to same-sex marriage in the Constitution. The wording they said was something like, I don't have it in front of me, but it says something like, marriage is such a fundamental right that it's not in there. Okay, the Constitution says the states can make laws about family law, right, and so on. But there's nothing in there about, and so the U.S. Supreme Court found a fundamental right to same-sex marriage, to any kind of marriage that you want.
Well, didn't they go under the pursuit of happiness? Wasn't he?
They did. There was a whole bunch of dictum.
And everyone deserves the right to be happy, so that's the pursuit of happiness. And if
that was one of the many things that they said.
Kennedy's argument?
In a Supreme Court opinion, you might have 100 pages in a big opinion, but you've only got maybe one paragraph here that's the actual holding. The rest of it is just bloviating, and we call that dictum. And there's all kinds of arguments said we find a fundamental right to same-sex marriage because of these other things that we've explained here. We find a fundamental right. And if
that
you
will
find,
solve the population problem.
Pardon me?
Maybe that will solve the population problem.
That's where
Exactly. Okay, so defense of marriage, same-sex, that's where we, but yes, Rudy.
Ted Cruz, in his last, as the state AG or whatever he was at, fought hard to keep the laws on the books about
Sodom.
in case it was a deal breaker for that. But he was actually, still.
Whatever law you don't have to have, there's nothing, have to pass reasonable, whatever the laws are concerned. Let's get to transgender bathrooms. I don't want to make this, I said I wouldn't make this about this. I said it on to a lot of people too. And saying I won't go to Target, I won't shop at Target and so on. Why they did that, I don't know. But here's what I want to ask you. On these, but I doubt anybody in here, I bet we all feel the same here. I bet there's nobody that disagrees. But on any kind of an issue, a constitutional question. Congress have education? No. In family law, that's all reserved to Congress. And somebody proposes a law that says men can.
There's no authority to.
Just like in partial birth abortion. I'm really in agreement. Now, if they'll word it in such a way that we're getting rid of a previous unconstitutional law that allows it, maybe I would vote for that. But the point is, you're exactly right. The point is that Congress has no authority to be doing that. It's asked does Congress have the right that says, whatever it is, and for whatever reasons, we're going to use the rack. We can't do that. That's unconstitutional. The states or the national government can't torture people. We can't use the rack, right? Against the law in America. It's a particular issue. Then you go to the merit. Politicians to say, and it always sounds, pretty good, unless the Constitution happens to be on their side. Mitt Romney, I got to give him some last, but he was the governor of Massachusetts. He didn't do that. But so you're being hypocritical. You're arguing, and they said, I'm not being hypocritical for this reason, but he gave an excellent. He said, let's pass a health care law. They can pass welfare laws. They can pass, those kinds of laws if they want to, right? That's like out of five because.
It's interesting that they did the exact same thing with their policy that if a man.
Well, let's talk about it. On Target thought we're going to get by with it. Maybe they will get by with it. But it's hot enough, it's on people's minds and so on. What do you do about it? Argument for or against it? You got to outdo yourself every. Thank you.
He's promoting his food as well. Shiloh and White.
Between Biloxi and Rome's Quarter.
The states could outlaw these things, but the Supreme Court has already shown that they're willing to find a fundamental right to same-sex marriage. They may feel. You want to go to the one you paid 2 kopeck probably.
Nice.
I'm sorry.
As we eat our
I'm sorry, I
sandwiches.
shouldn't mention that. I forgot y'all eating in front of me. Okay, the hate, any hate crime is probably about 10, 15 states that have hate crime. If it can be shown that you of your hatred, religion, color, creed, or national origin, or now sexual preference. On this, the sexual preference, the LGBT, bisexual, transsexual, for decades, inherent characteristics, that's they've found in these, they've found a fundamental right to say, the hate crimes says, and in their mind, so if they were found, and in that state, the death, that's what hate crimes do. It adds one level of punishment into consideration and so on. My concern about this, thoughts. They punish bigoted, wrong thoughts, granted, but if you have the wrong thought, remind you of anything, I don't want to have, in America, it's always been that we, men or women or Buddhists or anybody else, then you don't get punished. So I just say that this is a scary thing. In the Utah, out of there, the thing I didn't like is it's with hate crimes law, no pun intended. Okay, hate crimes. Does anyone have any comments or stuff they want to bring up? Greg.
Well, I want to use it now that people don't need to present.
One, let's ask the states do have the Constitution, all kinds of things, when you're going to have them, not, and all of that sort of stuff. But also they have the right to decide, I'm sorry, you were asking about
Voter ID.
Voter ID. Voter ID. They have the right to decide whether or not you can just show your, or you can show your utility deal. You have right to do that constitutionally, to be able to be registered.
And agreed that they had to have photo ID.
And
Yeah.
Texas won.
If you don't have to show ID, but if it's a local election or state,
The federation, the Democratic administrations always want that because, you know, the joke is that they're undocumented Democrats. They know that it's going to be voting, 90% will be voting.
Cases of voter fraud ever.
All things are pure to the
Now, last time Kruger Citizens, at least up to a point you did, but then they got rid of you'd have to show a driver's license. They didn't even, all I had to do was tell them my name, and then they looked it up on the thing, and it said,
pretty
sign
liberal
here.
stuff on that at least it gives us the opportunity to polish those states with the purest of people. I lived in Utah for full people. They really, really are. And yet, if you get involved in the politics there and you're in a room and they got a box of ballots and stuff, there's everything that could possibly be done to have those ballots not, and new boxes will appear, all kinds of, and I wonder what in the world it's like. I'm just talking about here in America, you know. Every other country, just a wonderful institution that as long as we and we get probably what we deserve, they're the sovereigns. They get to choose. If not, we're going to certainly keep going. And maybe they'll choose to have divine right of kings, and maybe we'll just get rid of the Constitution, and maybe we'll join or something like that. The U.S. Constitution. We're getting to amend the Constitution. Fine, Rudy.
Well, I was just gonna toss out that maybe we'll have voluntarism. One can only hope. Right?
Voluntary, and there's a difference between voluntarism and voluntarism. It's true that if we were politicians to be able to, we need to be doing that, taking care of the starving babies and the freezing grandmothers and so on. Just like Madison said, if men were angels, then we wouldn't have to have government. We wouldn't have to have laws and so on, but men aren't angels. And so as long as we're in this imperfect world, we do have to protect our God-given unalienable rights. We give some minimal things to the natural, things better. The model that the government is involved in everything that they're not supposed to be involved in by the 10th Amendment. Education, welfare, national parks. I know. But, you know, all of these areas that are reserved to the state. I'm done. We've gone through now civil rights. Next, I think, and so we're going to